Hey everybody, Skip, Mid-America Dirt, and I am super excited to be joined by Hall of Famer Larry Shaw. Larry, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Skip. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, thank you. And let me start off by asking you this. I don't know a lot about your history. So where are you from, and tell me a little bit about your early days.
I'm from right here in Batesville. I was raised up about 20 miles from Batesville at a little town called Oil Trough. That's where I went to school. And there's nine of us kids. My dad had a farm and we raised cattle and different things. In fact, on that farm there in my early days, they had two little towns that had some rodeos. And I decided I was going to be a bull rider because I thought I could get hurt doing something like that and wouldn't have to work. But that didn't work. That just lasted about 2 years, and I ended my bull riding contest. But then in high school, I met my wife Cheryl, and we uh, we dated there for a long time. And then I got drafted into the military in '65, and then we I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training and advanced training. Then I got shipped to El Paso, Texas at Fort Bliss and White Sand Missile Range out in there around New Mexico and different places. And in 1966, Cheryl and myself got married. We went back to Texas, and then sometime during that year, she come back home because she just wasn't health wasn't real good. She was pregnant, what it was, with Kevin, and then she come back out there later. But when I got out of the military, I went to work for her dad. He had a mechanic starter business and auto repair stuff, and I worked for him for about 2 years. Meanwhile, I had went to some General Motors school, and when I was in the military, I took some mechanical stuff, and it's I just worked for him about 2 years, and I decided I wanted to be in business for myself. That was at Newport, Arkansas, which is about 30 miles from Batesville. I come up here, I didn't want to go in competition against him, but I was going to be doing the same stuff I was doing there. And I put in a business called Larry Shaw Auto Clinic and Body Shop. And I had quite a few people working for it. We built that up to be a real good business. And so during this deal, uh, I was doing some stuff for Julian Martin. He had a trucking company, and I put windshields in his big trucks and worked on his alternator and starter stuff like that. Him and Mark had went to Talladega sometime in September or August, September, and to the Talladega 500. And Julian called me when we get back. He's wanting to build a car for Mark to go race. Uh, Mark had been riding them mopeds and them bikes around, and Julian didn't like that. He really wanted to get her. He really wanted. Julian was a race fan anyway. He wanted him in a race car, so we built him a race car. But he called me, wanted to know if I'd help him build one. And I told him I didn't know anything about building race cars. And he said, "We don't need it. Let's just learn together." So the first year we built that 55 Chevrolet. We worked all winter on it. We finally got it done. And we started running out here at Locust Grove. Then that little track there then was a little quarter-mile racetrack. We raced there on Friday night. And on Saturday night, we would either go to Benton Speedway in Little Rock or Heber Springs and race. We did. And then in 1974, that's the first year we raced, Mark actually won the Arkansas State Championship in the 6 hours class. Next year, we built another 55, did the same deal. And then next year, we built a big block Chevrolet Camaro and run late model dirt. And then he was pretty dominant at that too. He had a big block in whereabouts on a small block, which Julian was all about big blocks. I mean, he didn't want to ride the coffee shop with you in a small block. He was all about big block stuff. So then the next year we went asphalt. We would run Springfield, Missouri on Friday night and go to Fort Smith on Saturday night, and we won the championship at both tracks. And then it's sometime during that period, after we did all that, I just kind of went one more year, and then I decided that I didn't want to be on the road anymore. Because what it was living in Batesville, Arkansas, everywhere we raced when we run ASA or Argo, we had to leave here and go all the way to Madison, Wisconsin, or Winchester, Indiana, or Milwaukee, someplace. But it was always a long drive. So we'd leave Thursday afternoon, we'd race Friday night, qualify Friday night, and then Saturday on ASA, the way they did it back then, you'd qualify Friday, and then Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, whichever one they preferred, they'd run two 100-lap races. The first 100-lapper would be the inside road for Sunday afternoon, 300 or 400-lap race, whatever it was. The second would be outside. So we did that. I burned out after a while of that, and so I decided I was going to do something different. During this time, Julian had bought my auto. Julian had talked me into going to work for him and Mark full time. So I sold the auto repair and body shop business to another gentleman. I went to work for him full time. And after that second year there of asphalt racing, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore because Kevin and Kirk, they'd always been with me and stayed with me. And I kind of missed their childhood because I was off racing. So I decided I'm going to do something different. And Ray Baker
Man,
from Michigan called, wanted me to come up there and work for him. He wanted me to manage his whole place, take care of all the parts order, all the customer. All he wanted to do is just build racing engine. And I told him I didn't think I wanted to come to Michigan, but he kept bugging us. So he sent Cheryl and myself 2 plane tickets. And we flew up there and looked it over. And he told me what he wanted me to do and what he'd pay me. And he told me to give Cheryl a job in the office. So we moved up there. And that first year up there, they got 88 inches of snow, I think, in January and
golly.
February. And that's more snow than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I told Ray that March, I said, Ray, I ain't going to be here next winter. I said, I'm going back home. I said, I don't want to be up in this stuff. Oh, I'll buy you a new blazer. I said, well, it's going to take more than that. And he said, how much? Well, then I knew I messed up. I said, no, I'm going home. I'm going home. To make that deal a little easier, Shirley, mother and dad come up there in May to visit us, and the boys come back home with them, and they wasn't coming back up there. They said they wasn't coming back. They stand down here. So that made it easier for us to move back. So we moved back here in August or September, and I started Larry Shaw Race Car October 10th of 1979.
Okay.
So
And now those when you started doing that, that was pavement cars. Is that right?
yeah, the first few cars, well, almost. That's what I was going to build, a pavement car. But the first car I sold was to Ken Estrie, and
Okay.
it was a dirt car. And
Let me ask you
reason,
this question before you go any further. How I want to get this in before I forget about it. How many cars do you think you have uh built?
I know exactly, 5,463. Did I lose you?
Yeah, somebody trying to call you?
I don't know. There, you got me
Uh,
back.
yeah, I got you back. Let's do that again. So Larry, how many race cars have you built?
I know exactly how many I built. I built 5,463. Now that
All
don't
right.
count the early days with Mark Martin. I'm just talking about when
Okay.
I started Larry Shaw Race Car, October 10th of 1979, till I sold it in July of 2019. Because of all the cancer I had, I had it 3 times. They took part of my colon out twice. I had prostate cancer and went through all that chemo. I just didn't have no energy, didn't feel like working, and that was the last car off the jig.
And who bought that first car?
First car, I was building it for Ken Estrie, but Van Gimbel from Ponca City, Oklahoma, was in a race and it got real dusty. He wrecked and tore his car up, and he called and wanted to know if he wanted to get a car off and wanted to know how quick he'd get one. I said, he's got one built right now. I said, no, I got one on the jig that belongs to Ken Estrie. We said, call Ken and see if he'd let me have it and build him another one. Because he said, I need to go to Muskogee. They got a big race down there and it's going to pay pretty good money. I really need to go to that. So I called Ken and asked him. He said, yeah, yeah. So Van Gimbel actually got the first car, but it was for Ken, and Ken got the second car. Anyway, Van Gimbel went ahead and won that race at Muskogee, and Tommy Lassner was driving for Donnie Krasberg from Southwest Speed, and he ran second to him.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that all started, first to the end.
So there was I remember when I took your shop, you were telling me about a race in Kansas. Can you tell me about that race in Kansas?
Okay, the car that Van Gimbel drove, he was driving that for Don Carpenter out of Ulysses, Kansas, with number C88. Now, later on, that was in the next year, they had a race at Hutchinson, Kansas. Don Jeter from Woodruff, Oklahoma called and wanted to know if he said, "I hear you build a pretty good car." I said, "Yes, sir, I think I do." He said, "I'd like to come over and talk to you about it." So he shows up over here on Monday morning, and we're visiting talking, and he asked me, he said, "What kind of motor do we need if we get a car off of you?" I said, "We need to get a Baker." I said, "I work for him in Michigan, and he's got the best one out right now. You got time to run up there?" I said, "Well, I got to be back here Wednesday night." He said, "We'll go today. We'll be back." I didn't know he had a plane at the airport. I thought they drove in. So
Nice.
we go to Michigan, and we're back there. We're back there in Ray's engine room. He's still just building engine. And I introduced him to Don, and Don said, "Okay, Shaw, what motor we need?" I said, "Well, one like that and right there, that 430. He said, "Well, we'll take that, sir." He said, "No, no, no." He said, "That goes to Georgia. I can't sell that motor." And he said, "When are y'all going to race anyway?" Now, this is on Monday. He said, "We're
Yeah.
going to race a week from Friday." Well, see, that's the first I had actually heard about that because I had been building these asphalt. I had Toby Butler, Joe Shear, that bunch there. I'd been building the Rick Corrali. I'd building an asphalt car. So here I am going to have to come back home and try to figure out how to build a dirt car to run. So what I did, I come back and when we got everything lined out and we brought the motor back with us on the plane. We get back here Tuesday night and Monday night. Tuesday morning we started building this car and we worked all week. That was before we had powder coating and fancy sheet metal equipment and everything, but we got that thing done and I called uh, John Cobb, Nathan Cobb in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I wonder if I could use his scales Friday morning. He said, "Yep. What time you going to be here?" I said, "About 4 o'clock. "Oh, no, no, I won't be here for 9 or 10. I said, "Okay." I said, "We'll be there." So we used his scale, the car, and this car was for Buck Kedwell and Don Jeter. And we scale the car and we load up. We go to Hutchinson, Kansas. And I tell everybody this day, the good Lord lined everything up perfect for me that weekend or that whole week. We unloaded the car, and I think it was 7/10 quicker than the second place car. We won the heat race. We lined up, won the trophy dash. And the next day, we won the 60 lap feature. And Van Gamble, the one that got extra car, runs second to us. Now, when I left the racetrack that day, I had sold 7 race cars. And one of them was to
Nice.
Moyer, Billy Moyer. I
All
think Larry
right.
McDaniels, Ferry Collier. There's 7 cars. So we started back home. Now you got to realize this was 1980. 1980. I didn't have bag phones or cell phone in our part of the country. So I stopped at a truck stop and called Cheryl. I said, "Hey, we're out of the asphalt business for right now." I said, "Well, I sold 7 race cars out here and they're all dirt cars." So that's how that was the biggest deal I had right there.
Okay. And that was basically the start right there, that race in Kansas.
Yeah, we had a lot of cars built when we got back home.
Like, I bet you did. I bet you did. Let me ask you this question. I heard you talking about this earlier. That track in Heber Springs that I'm kind of jumping off, but I didn't get to ask you about it before. Was that half mile? Or
No,
was it the smaller one?
no,
He told me,
the half mile was Wynn Stadium. It
okay,
just stayed
Wednesday.
open about 2 or 3 years. The other one was a little bull ring, about like Locust Grove was back then. Locust Grove was a real small racetrack. In fact, when I come back from Michigan in 19, when I come back to Michigan, I didn't have a whole lot going on. I built a lot of race cars, but I I was going to have a racetrack here in Arkansas, another one. So I made a deal with Max Rutledge. He owned the land, and he had took that old racetrack and put a catfish pond on each end, just banked it up, and had a catfish pond. And I talked to him about letting me lease it or buy it off of him. He didn't want to buy it, didn't want to sell it, but he'd lease it to me. Eventually, we bought it. But we took that track in 1988, worked all year 88, and we opened the track up. Sure, on myself. We opened it in August of 1989. That was our first night of racing, August
Okay,
1989.
so the Batesville Speedway that everybody knows today, you built.
Yes, sir. But
Okay,
and when I when
that's
I did
awesome.
that, ESPN was trying to do some dirt shows back then, and I had talked to them. They told me they wanted this is Greek to me, but they said they wanted 25 foot candle of power, and so I made it. They wanted 24, so I made it 26 foot candle of power. That's what they said, and they wanted all of the cables put underground as possible, so there wouldn't be a wave cam. So every wire out here in this racetrack is underground. And that was a
Wow.
additional. That was really a big additional. I think that was like 58,000 extra just put them under the ground. But we did it that way.
Golly.
And the first
Golly. So
work.
I see.
Or
I always thought Mooney bought that or built that place, but I did not know that you were the original builder of what we
well,
know now as Batesville Motor Speedway.
I teamed Mooney up with me third year in '92. I think I had Mooney. I sold him part of it in '92. Well, '94, I had a fire that burnt my race car business, burnt my shop. It happened on February the 18th, same day the Daytona 500 was going. I was working a night shift at my shop, and they was painting a car, and somehow or another it shorted out and caught on fire and pretty well destroyed everything we had. We was at Daytona, Cheryl, myself, and Jason King, and the whole racing community here come in there and help get a whole bunch of the stuff out of the building, but we still lost. We still lost a whole bunch of stuff. So that was in '94. So at the end of that year, I decided to sell my part to Mooney. So
Okay.
Mooney had it ever since. But and we put the walls up and bleacher. We did a whole lot, but Mooney's done a lot more to it since we
Okay.
got rid of it.
Okay. Um, Tell me about the Dirt Track World Championship that you were talking to me about at the shop tour. Um, Talk to me about that. That was a big race for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was back then. Everybody. I'm going to get on suspension here for a second. I'll come back to this,
Okay.
but everybody pretty well run leaf springs and coilover. That would mean you have a main leaf spring and a coilover. That's pretty what everybody run. Jeff Purvis, everybody run that, and we would run that. But we finally got to look at some drag racing stuff and thought we'd try to make some bird cages rear suspension. And we did, and we're pretty competitive around here in Missouri and Oklahoma. We could kind of be pretty competitive, but when we go over east and get over around Atomic Speedway and them other tracks like that, them leaf springs would just get launched off the turner, and they was so much faster than we was. So we we'd go over there with our 4-bar bird cage on there for the fixer though. We'd change that stuff back and go back to leaf and coilover. And I mean that was something Moyer did pretty regular. So when the Dirt Track World Championship come up, I had talked to Earl Gertie about getting a motor to run, and Earl cut me a real good deal on a motor for Moyer, and I told Moyer, I said, "Hey, I'm going to get a motor for you to run in Pennsburg." Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I said, just one thing that's going to have to happen here before I'm going to pull the trigger. He said, what's that? I said, when we leave here, we're leaving here with that 4-bar system under the car, and we're not taking that leaf stuff with us. And I said, that's the only way I'm going to do this thing, because I said, that's what we need to sell. We need to sell 4-bar cars. All right. Yeah. He said, maybe that motor would be enough. I said, well, that's all I'm doing. So anyway, here we go. We Denny that worked for Moyer he was from up above Des Moines at Fort Scott, Kansas, that he went home to see his parents. And we didn't have no way to get that motor back here quick enough because it's like on a Tuesday and we was going to need to leave Thursday. And I called Denny and asked if he could go to Indianapolis and, and fly into Indianapolis and rent a car and rent a truck and bring that motor to us. He said he would. Well, back then you couldn't rent a truck. Nobody rented a truck, everything was car. So he rented a Pinto station wagon. He showed up that car with the rear bumper almost touching the ground. But anyway, we get the motor in the car and we take out the pin bar and don't think we qualified real good because we started like I think 17th or 18th in the feature. I know it was Moyer's birthday. Uh, that was a big deal back then. Uh, for us, it'd be nice if you win this thing on your birthday, Moyer. That's what I told him before the race. Well, anyway, we had if people wants to go see that race, it's on my. If you go to my deal, Larry Shaw Racing, that race is on there. You can kind of see what
Okay.
happened. But we took the lead from John Mason on lap 55 and won the race. Uh, anyway, that was the biggest year that I ever had in racing. We sold 246 race cars that year, and
Golly.
that was the most. That was a big deal for me.
Oh yeah. I mean that's a lot of race cars no matter what time period you're in, right? I mean, even now that's a lot of race cars, right?
It was a lot back then. Sure was.
Man. Yeah, I would think so. So you're responsible basically Moyer came to Arkansas uh because of you.
Yeah, when Moyer bought that car when he was in Hutchinson, Kansas, he come down and picked it up 4 or 5 weeks later. The racing season was almost over, when we had that race in Kansas. And he takes it home, and then later in the spring, he was running, winning a few races, but he's all the time falling out. Something was breaking, falling off his car, or just some crazy little deal that shouldn't have been happening. Well, I come out of the Julian Martin school where he had all those trucks, and he run truck from coast to coast, and he had a real good maintenance program. So I all went off of that. Our race cars, we brought him in the racetrack, we looked them all over real good, made sure everything's okay. But Moyer, he'd be leading or up close to front, and he'd fall out of the race because something broke. And he called me one day on a Friday. One day he said, "Hey, can you come to Kansas City Lakeside tonight?" I said, "Yeah, you racing there this week?" "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'll drive up there." So I get up there, and he set quick time, and in his heat race, the right front lower A-frame broke. And Lakeside back then, anybody knows, it had a real high bank. He went over the wall and landed out there in the parking lot. There wasn't no cars there at the time,
Golly.
and tore it all to pieces. And I get in my truck, drive around out of the pit, drive there, and got his helmet off, looking everything over. He said, "What do you think, Shaw?" I said, "Boy," I said, "you ain't got much left here, boy." "I know. What do you think I need to do?" I said, "Well, I want you to do this here. I want you to go home and get all your stuff. I ain't got very much. I said, well, get what you got and bring it to Arkansas, and I'll build you another car, and you can stay. You can live with me and Cheryl, and we got a house there. We got basement. We got clean room for you and everything." So come down there, and I said, "Then I'm going to do some kind of program with this." So I may have been the first one to start that house car program. I told him, I said, "Well, look here, I'm going to get you a car, and I'll furnish everything. Did you just go win races for me?" And I said, "At the end of the year, I mean, if you tear up a rear end, we'll patch it up, sell it at a trade show. We'll try to salvage some of the money back. If you know brake rotors, don't go put new rotors on, sell them at the end of the year." So I wasn't going to complete take a bath on, but that's kind of what it was. And then first thing you know, third year in, we done had 4 cars. Maury
Wow.
had 4 cars. So, but he won a lot of races. He won a lot of races for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's two legends right there working
The
together. That's
the
pretty awesome. But
the
now what
car that we
you
won,
tell
the car that we won Hutchinson, Kansas is, I built that for Don Jeter, like I said, and Buck Cadwell drove it, and that was a good combination.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you told me yesterday at the shop, Trevor. Tell me again today why you had to have 4 cars. Gives it different setups, different rules.
Well, we could just haul one if we took both cars. We had to take a trailer behind the pickup or something. Haul that. But you had NCRA, you had NDRA, and you had USAC, and you had World of Outlaw a little bit back then. And all of them, the rules were just a little bit
Different.
on all of them. So the spoiler real deal was, some of them had sideboard and some didn't, and you just didn't. So, and then you need to. We was running a lot of races. We'd run a lot of races. We'd run uh, Friday night, Saturday night, sometimes go to Hopstop, Indiana, run Sunday night, and we just did a lot of races.
And were you out on the road that whole time?
Yeah, I was with Maury most of the time.
Okay. All right. And did you do a lot of research and development while you were out there?
Yeah, we did.
R&D while you were out there?
Yeah, we did a lot of testing and developing. And one thing we did back then, Larry Phillips, in my world, he's always been there. When I started, excuse me, when I started with Mark Martin, uh, when we go race at Springfield, Missouri, or Fort Smith, Larry was the one we always had to contend with. And most time he would win, but Mark ended up winning quite a few before it was all over and done. But then when Mark went on to ASA, Larry went and run a few of those. But I said, Mark, Larry Phillips is probably the most talented driver I know, because he ran all that stuff at Springfield and Tri-State, and then Tri-State went back dirt, and he went to a dirt car, and then he went back and forth to dirt cars, asphalt car, and could run either one and win in both of them. And then when NASCAR did their short track program, of course, he won 5 of those national championships. Like he win, they had who had the best record of 24 fixtures. That would be the champion in their regional. It broke up like 4 or 6 regional, but he'd all he'd always win 22 out of 26. He was pretty dominant.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me how did it progress? When did you you told me about the shop fire. What year was that?
1994.
1994. So how did it go after that?
Well, what happened then, the insurance company, that's where I learned a whole lot about an insurance company. About all their, my personal opinion, they're just good to collect your premium and fight you when you have a loss. I lost way over $1 million worth of stuff, and they come out there on that Tuesday morning. I got back to Daytona and had a book thick as a Bible flopped down on a piece of plywood table I had set up for my desk. So, well, let's see what you had covered, Shaw. I said, what do you mean? Well, we don't know if you had enough coverage. They paid me $127,500, and I lost all that. So I had to rebuild. But
Oh my
at that
gosh.
time, and I'm not blaming none of these racers for leaving me. Moyer was driving my stuff, Wendell was driving my stuff, Gundecker, this, but they all didn't think I could get them. This is 18th of February. We're going to race in March. So a lot of them didn't think I could get them cars. And some of them might have been ready to leave me anyway, but that just really hurt me there that I lost all them. Greg Herron, Daryl DeFrance, quite a few people stayed with me, but uh, it was
It,
pretty hard days.
is that when you started into the modifieds?
Okay, shortly after that, somebody running our late models somewhere up in Iowa. I don't know who it was now offhand. I'd have to look back at record, but he had one of my late models, and he had a teenage son come up. He said, "Man, I like it. Would you build me a modified?" I said, "I ain't never built none of them." He said, "Well, I'd buy one or two if you'd build me one because I want my son to start racing modified. I don't want to put him in a late model, so I built him one." And then after that, I got really involved in it. Jarrett Landers, which is Lance Landers' son,
Oh yeah.
he had one of my modified. He did real good with it. And Steve Arpin, they all had good. And then, of course, Ricky Thornton had her modified. He helped sell a lot of stuff, But that's kind of where I started. The late model business, excuse me, my world had faded away a little bit. I just wasn't really in that clique like I need to be. But then in 2001, Kenny Hendricks, a friend of mine, which we started a company called S&H Industrial. We do conveyor system. Uh, he he said, "I'm gonna help you get back in late model business, Shaw. What do you think about what would be a good driver that you want to try?" I said, "Dale McDowell." He said, "All right." So we put a deal. We did a deal with Dale for 5 years, and during that 5 years, Kenny and myself, we really backed Dale, stayed right with him, everything. And Dale, he won the Topless, the dirt track world champion, not the dirt track, but the World 100. He won Cedar Lake. He won Dixie Shootout. He won a bunch of races for us.
Yeah.
And we honored it for 5 years, and it stayed real good. And meanwhile, during this whole deal, the cancer hit shortly after that. So I decided to get out of the S&H industrial business. Kenny had somebody that would buy my part out. So I sold my part of S&H. I kept the stock, but I got out of it. But Kenny really did all that to just help me get my late model program back over skills. And we did. We sold some late models after that. So
So
uh,
when did you get out of the chassis making business?
July 2019.
Okay. All right. And did you sold the company because it's still there, right? I mean, they're still
Yeah,
making
I
cars.
sold the company. They changed the name of it. It's still Larry Shaw Race Car. They just got Shaw Racing. But
Okay.
yeah, they still got all the real estate and all the stuff and everything.
Okay.
And my son
Well,
still works there. Kevin does.
well, I
Kirk,
was going to ask.
He owns a company called New Vision Graphics. He stays pretty well involved in it.
People that have watched the shop tour already, they've seen the video. I got the video you had, the promotional video. So your sons worked with you there at the shop.
Yeah, they started working with me when we started the business in October. Well, they hung around. You seen the t-shirts they had when
Yeah.
when they was with Mark Martin. Uh, they was just like, see, I'm trying to think. They was like 6 or 7 years old, so they was with me through all the Mark Martin day. And then they went to Michigan. And then we come back and started Larry Shaw uh, race car business. They both went to work for me. Kevin kind of just bolted cars together, do whatever he needed to. And Kurt was in the sheet metal and body business. So they've been with
Yeah.
me all the way.
Yeah. And now
And
one of them raced, right?
Cheryl was my secretary, huh?
One of them raced, right?
Yeah, Kirk raced. He raced at
Okay.
Lebanon and Bolivar, run against Larry Phillips, and won a few races up there against Larry. He actually won the championship at both them tracks.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, Larry. I've been wanting to ask you, what is your favorite track if you had to pick one? Not Batesville, another one. Like what was your favorite track to go to?
Well, Batesville was number one, but I always liked Lebanon, Missouri, and West Plains,
Okay.
Missouri. And when I back up and get the bull rings, I like I-30, which is gone now. And Tri-State was always good to me. I don't have a problem with Muskogee, Oklahoma. That was an old horse track, and we run a lot of races at Muskogee, Oklahoma. You know, I had a good friend out there, Charlie Randolph. He owns all those Charlie fried chicken places. You know, in fact, about the third year in business, he went to buying race cars off of me, and he wanted me to go to Enid, Oklahoma with him one weekend. I go out there, and he got into it with somebody. I don't know who it was. I think I know, but I ain't gonna throw the name out there. But this guy's gonna come over and whoop him, and Charlie was a little fired up, rascal. He wasn't very big, but he'd jump there and fight with somebody. So anyway, when the dust settled, we all went our separate ways. And Charlie called me Wednesday and said, "Shaw, I'm going to be at Tri-State this weekend. You got to come back out here. I got something I want you to see." I get back out there. That chicken he had on his hood, he went and put boxing wings on that chicken, ready to fight that rooster on his hood. And he used that from then on. But yeah, he was
uh,
dead.
okay. Yeah. Well, those are some good tracks. I mean, I've been to most of them. I never got to the I-30 before it closed. That's one I never got to go to. I hate that I missed that one. But let me ask you this question. I've been meaning to ask you: how did you come up with the design for the chassis for the frame of the car? Is it just trial and error, or how did that come about?
Well, when I left Baker to come back down here in Michigan, I had called Ed Howe to see if he would let me be a dealer for him down here. He had a company in Little Rock called Racing Head Service. They're sprang off of Conk County. They had a parts business for Ed Howe. They sold Ed Howe's parts in Little Rock. And Ed told me, he said, "Well, I'm looking here, Shaw." I said, "How far is Little Rock from you?" I said, "It's about 100 miles." Well, do you know exactly? Because my deal is I got a dealer program set up for 100 miles. I said, "Well, Little Rock is probably 100 miles, but Racing Head Service are on the other side of Little Rock. They're 10 miles deep in Little Rock, so it's 110 miles. All right, I'm gonna set you up." So I started off with I'd use Ed's front stub and buy all the parts, the hub, rotors, and everything off of him. And then I'd use his, and then I'd build my own roll cage and tail section.
Okay.
So I was actually selling kit cars at that time. And then I'd buy stubs off him and I'd build everything up. Well, I said I-30 one night, and this young man in a car number 66, it was a Ryder car, just his sponsor was Ryder Trucking Company. And I'm watching him, and boy, he is bad fast in the turn, but down the straightaway, he's all over the place, you know. And so when that race was over, I went over. At that time, I had been in Arkansas long enough, and some of these tracks, I kind of had a pretty good little name for myself in racing. I went and introduced. "I know who you are, Larry. I know who you are. What are you up to?" I said, "Hey, what kind of car is this?" He says, "A '65 Ford Torino." He said, "You want to look it over? You want me to take the hood off?" I said, "Yeah, let me look at it." I looked it all over, and it was strut rod front end. And all we'd been running was a Camaro front end with a split lower eight frame, you know. So I looked it all over. And I come back home Monday. I called her and Ed. I said, "Hey, we need to build. I think we need to build a strut rod front end car." I said, "I think that's going to be the future of the late model racing." Ed said, "Oh, I can't do that, Shaw. I got all my money tied up in these casting for these parts for these Chevrolets, and I could never do that." So I think I'm going to do it, Ed. What is it gonna be?" I said, "I think it's a '65 Ford Torino is what I'm gonna get out of the salvage yard and get my mounting points and everything." "Well, I don't recommend it." I said, "Okay." So anyway, I built one, and of course that's, everything strut rod front end now.
Yeah.
The next year, Port City Butch Miller called me. He was running Port City's asphalt car and wanted to know if I'd send him one of those strut rod front end studs up there. He's going to put it in his asphalt car. He said, "Send me two. I'm going to put one on each one." Well, he won a lot of races. And of course, then Harley at Port City started using them and left handed. just about everybody went to the strut rod front end car. So, far as how to design it, I got the one out of the salvage yard, got all the mounting points off of it, and then kept kindly improving it as we went along with the measurement, doing different things, and that's how that come about.
Throughout
And then,
throughout throughout the years, did you have to change a lot of stuff on it,
well,
or
no, we're pretty close. I'd use Moyer for my guinea pig. He would, we would try something and test it and see if it worked. The only problem with Moyer, if it worked, he wasn't real open with me, tell me what he did, you know. So I had to try to figure out what we did because he's going to be running against these people. I'm trying to tell how to set the car up, you know. But he was okay. He it paid off in the long run. Uh,
yeah?
yeah, yeah. There wasn't a whole lot to do in the front end, you know. You just
Okay,
but the back end where everybody was working all the time.
okay, all right. And so not yeah, I think you told me this yesterday in the shop tour, maybe not, but so there wasn't there's not a lot of difference in between those early ones, the frame and the frames today. Is that right?
Far as brain, no, they're still got a roll
Okay.
cage and tail section, and they all do a little bit of stuff different. But you know, y'all everybody got to start with the roll cage and centering, and just do what you need to from there. But man, technology, you know, Longhorn's got all them real good people that smart works for them. In fact, Steve Arkin used to work for me. He drove my car. He run out of my shop in his car, and he 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 moved up and did a real good job. A whole lot of them people over east back in the 80s and 90s, some of them worked for me and some of them went on to go work for people with NASCAR teams. Bill
Okay.
Davis, good friend of mine, he just passed away 2 months ago. He helped me a whole lot in my early days of racing, you know. In fact, when Mark went over east and had a little failure, his sponsor didn't come through, so he come back home, and Bill Davis and myself, we built him two uh, asphalt cars to go run Argo and ASA, and then he went back, and then, by the way, if they looked at video, you see where the the 400 lap Nashville before you win the guitar, we was gonna win that race, and they had a caution with 2 laps to go. And back then, everybody listened to everybody on the radio. Darrell was running second, and when the caution come out, Mark radioed in and said, "You don't have no brakes." I lost my brakes. Well, he wasn't gonna be able to pit and get tired. Well, when Darrell heard that, he shot in that tire, pulled back out, and drove around and
Oh,
won the race. Took me a
man.
long time to ever drink Gatorade after that.
uh, those so that was pre dirt cars, right?
No, that's during dirt cars.
Oh, was it
That,
really?
that,
So
that yeah, that's
was it the
Mark.
same
No,
frame, or
no,
was it
no,
different?
no, no. It's completely different. Asphalt car. We had an asphalt jig and dirt jigs. Asphalt jig.
Okay.
The frame for the asphalt car was under rail. Everything's real low to the ground. Everything
Okay.
and percentage. Everything's completely different. You know.
Yeah. You were telling me something about those things where you went somewhere and you it was so low to the ground you're afraid it was going to tear it all to pieces.
Well, that's Hutchinson, Kansas.
That
When I built
first
that
race?
car, when I built that car for Don Jeter and Buck Cadwell, I built that car like an asphalt body because
Uh,
I hadn't been building very many. The dirt cars I've building, people take them home and put their own body on. So I just, when you see the picture of it, is that I think you got pictures of it there. It's real close to ground. I tell everybody the good Lord lined everything up. The track was slick, red clay, top to bottom, and like I said, it wasn't no problem.
yeah, so if it had been bumpy, you're afraid that it might have changed things a
If
little
it'd
bit.
been bumped, if it'd been bumped, we wouldn't done no good. We tore the body off.
I got you. So it did work out, lined up really good for you there. Uh, so, oh, who was the biggest competitor throughout the years? I mean, is there somebody that stands out as the biggest competitor for you?
You talk about in car building
Car building?
competition.
Yeah.
Uh, well, we was all pretty close, to be honest with you. In the 80s and 90s, it was Rayburn, uh, you know, Bloomquist. When he showed up and went to Masterville, he was a big thorn in everybody's side. And then, so I guess you'd say Rayburn, Shaw, Masterbuilt, and then you had Barry Wright over in Carolina. He built a real good car, and Custom Chassis in Georgia. They had good cars.
Okay.
Larry Phillips, he just built what he wanted to build, you know. But Larry, he he wasn't really in our deal because he didn't care anything about building very many cars, you know.
Speaking of Blinkquist, He came through your place, didn't he, on his way from California?
Yeah, that's one of two mistakes that I made in my racing career. He come through here with an old beat up truck with a trailer that just it was an open trailer, had wooden sideboards on it and stuff, and just had everything pulled in there. My shop was right beside the highway over the airport. He just pulled it on the side of the road and come bouncing in there, that long hair and everything. Told me it's Scott Bloomquist. He's from California. He said, I'm going east. I'll find somebody to let me run out of the shop. I'm going to go run and win a lot of NDRA shows. I said, that's pretty tough. I know, he said. So he wanted to know if I had any room. I said, well, let me check something here. I got to take care of something here. So I'll go back around the back and I asked Moyer, he's back there working at the back shop. I said, hey, Moyer, there's a young man up front. Wanted to know if we had any room here for him to work out of the shop. I said, are you pretty tight back here? Who is it? Well, excuse me, sir. I said, he says his name is Scott Bloomquist or something like that. He said, Shaw, he was the one that 2 weeks ago when I went to Manzanita, he's out there in a sportsman car and run into me and knocked me in the wall and tore the whole front stub off. Moyer had to load up and come back home. Bloomquist had tore the whole front stub off his car. So I go back up front and I told Scott, I said, yeah, I just did this young man in the back shop on Moyer. And I said, I really don't have no room right now. All right, I'm going to keep going easy. He just stopped at Crasburg at Fort Smith. And Crasburg had Tommy Laxford out in his car, so he didn't have room for him. He goes over around Atomic Speedway and stopped there and got hooked up with somebody. And he had a sportsman car for 2 years over with a Camaro stub on it. And just winning everything, get some late money. And then
Golly.
when NDRA come to town, he was either like third or fourth quickest against all them bad late models. And then
Yeah.
he run third or fourth in the feature. Well, Masterbilt, Taylor and them seen him. They picked him up and that pretty well put him where he needs to be.
Uh,
It come back around. He called me. Mooney did this race at the racetrack out here and going to pay 100,000 win modified. He had 403 cars entered. Some of them didn't show, but
golly.
Bloomquist called one off that building car, run that $100,000 win modified. And I said, yeah, well, people wasn't really thinking too much about them late model boys running. Didn't think it because them modified kids was good back then. But anyway, we built him a car and he come in here and I'm all excited because I'm part owner of this car. And first night, what Mooney did, he took the top 8. He had each night, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, Thursday. He take 8 cars. That would be the first 8 cars the first night. They run all the heat races. I think 20 heat races and take the winner on. They'd go to the feature. I mean, this is a hard thing to make. And Bloomquist, he first night he run 7th and threw it away. I mean, we still got all that's in this thing is like 8 cars, and there's still almost 400 cars in this thing. And he comes over, and I'm all excited. I said, "We'll win the race, Scott," because I knew if he's in, we could win it.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't take it, Shaw. I said, Blue Point? He said, I ain't going to start. Said that was going to start me 19th or someplace. I'm going to get closer to front. I said, Scott, there's a whole bunch of cars that ain't even in this thing. I know, we'll make it. Have a little faith, Shaw. He said, okay. So the next night we come out there and he won the deal. He won the feature. So he started his middle row of the deal. And then he goes ahead and wins the race, 100,000, you know. So he
Yeah.
did come back
Wow.
eventually to stop here.
I gotcha. I gotcha. That's just pretty interesting, though. That he may have landed there if it hadn't have been for Wrecking Mortar out in that one race and been in Shaw cars for a long time. So that's pretty interesting. What were you saying about Jeff Purvis?
Well, that was another mistake. When I back in must have been 81, Clyde Purvis, that was Jeff's dad. He called. He said, "Hey Shaw, you don't know me, but I'm Jeff Purvis's dad. You heard of him?" I said, "Well, around Clarksville, Tennessee, yeah. I'm gonna buy him a car to go run outdoors." And I said, "He said, how quick can you get one?" I said, at that time I had quite a few on order. I said, "Oh no, I tried to work them in." Well, you don't know when? I said, "Probably at least 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think I can wait that long." Well, he went and bought one off of Rayburn. Of course, the rest of his history. Jeff ran Rayburn's cars all the time after that. So that was the other mistake. Probably got away.
I
But I
got you.
always tell everybody if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. The good Lord's been real good to me. I mean, I don't nobody feel sorry for me, but I beat cancer 3 times, had all that chemo, but I'm doing okay. Got a good family. Cheryl's been good to me, and Kevin and Kirk stayed right with me, and I've got a real good family. And awesome. All these racers has always been real supportive of me. And when I leave here, somebody says, "Well, you want to be remembered like?" I said, "Well, just that I always tried to help the young racers, the new racers, and try to help anybody that needed help that I could help. I just want to be remembered that I was there for them, So that's a
Yeah.
true deal.
Well, it's quite a career. How many Hall of Fames are you in?
I think 5. I think 5. Somebody I got in that first one, they want to know what somebody said, "What does that mean?" I said, "I think it means I'm getting old." But
Well,
I know
I
the
know you're in
dirt.
one for sure.
You got the Arkansas shirt
Yeah,
on.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I'm in that, and then the Arkansas main Hall of Fame at the Alltel deal, they recognized me down there with some kind of plaque and a star. At Dirt Track World Championship, Dirt Track Lake Mall, I'm in it. I'm in the Missouri deal. Of course, I'm in Batesville here. There's 2 more about. I'd have to look see who they are.
Okay. That's some major accomplishments, and that's what Larry, what's the high point? If your whole career, what is there one thing you can point to that's the high point?
Probably the Dirt Track World Championship,
Okay.
1986. That was real big. But then you back up with what all we did with, you know, we didn't know nothing about race car when we started racing with Mark, Julian, Mark, and myself. We did not know anything. And what we did back then, the racers has really got it made nowadays. If you need something, you go to parts out and get one and call and they send it to you. Back then, we had to make everything. If we broke an A-frame, we had to make another one. If we broke an axle tube, we had to repair it, buy a piece of tube and make it work. It was just so tough back then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the National Short Track Championship in 1977, we won it. That was big for me. I thought that was big. And then Toby Butler in out in Phoenix, he won that 300 lap West Coast, which is the same as the Busch Series now. He won that 2 years in a row for him. That was a huge deal. And that was right during that was an asphalt car. That was right during the middle of all my dirt stuff too. So,
Golly, see, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you were doing the pavement stuff with the dirt thing. So that's
yeah.
pretty interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
we had 1 jig for asphalt and two jigs for late model and 1 jig for repair. We had 4 jigs. Yeah.
okay. Well, Larry, I've had you on here for quite a while, and I know we've talked about doing a part 2 here at some point. Um, is there anything you want to add before we get off here, or anybody you want to thank? Or usually when I have race car drivers on here, I ask them if they want to thank their sponsors. But I'll just ask you: is there anybody you want to thank or mention before we get off here?
No, there's so many racers that I just don't even know where to start to try to get them. But man, in my lifetime, I have had a lot of good racers. Somebody, maybe and you asked me how many features you think I won. I don't have no idea. I mean, how would you know? More year, we had years where we won 40 plus races every year.
Yeah. Ooh.
And just Kevin, Kevin Gundecker won quite a few races for me. You got the Taylor boy Jeff and Peyton. They won a lot of races for me. And you got Wendell. Wendell won racing for me before he did something different. And just everybody's been unreal good to me. So,
Yeah.
and I appreciate
Well,
every one of them.
well, I appreciate you
And
talking
we'll
to
and
me.
and what we'll do that next one. I'll try to get some names gathered up.
I got you. I got you. But hey, I do. It's an absolute honor for me to be able to have you on here and talk to you. And it was. I mean, and it was an honor to come to the museum yesterday and look around there. It's just that's a lot of history, and I know you wanted me to you want to tell people that they can come
Yeah,
see the museum.
they can come to the museum anytime they want to. They can call me if I'm in town. If I'm not in town, I can still make it work for them and come look at it. But there's so much history back there. We got that one room we hadn't even took stuff out of yet. So yeah, it's unreal. But yeah, my family had been real supportive of me. My Kevin and Kirk and my wife Cheryl, and then of course I got all these grandkids now. But yeah, it sure is. But sometime I'm coming up that way and going to stop and see you. Okay.
I
Whenever you get
I
ready to do this
appreciate it.
next one, just give me a day notice, okay?
I'll do it. I'll do it. Just to let you know, you're up here. You're up here on the wall now.
I see that. I see. By the way, anybody wants any stickers, let them know. I still got about 5,000.
Okay.
I
All
didn't know I
right.
was gonna get out. I didn't know I was gonna sell the race car business, so I had all the decals already ordered. So I got
I got you.
thousands of them. Okay,
I got
thanks,
you.
Skip.
Hey, thank you for coming on, sir. I appreciate it.